Hello, friends. Host Eric here, host of Talking with Famous People. And this evening, the topic, at least the official topic, is ENTPs versus ENTJs. Who wins under which metric? Well, I think the simplest answer to that question is pretty straightforward. The ENTJs are going to win on metrics that are more concrete, namely more subscribers, more money, more general success, probably a certain amount of more credibility even amongst the general viewing populace. But ENTPs are going to win on less concrete metrics. So, I think the ENTP is always going to win the argument versus ENTJ. And the ENTJ is going to say, well, you have fun with your win. I'm taking this money to the bank. So, grounds, the ENTP is kind of doomed to always lose somewhat. Hi, Sheila. How are you this evening? Of course, the reason I picked this topic is because of the recent C.S. Joseph stuff. I've been very pleased with the performance of that video. People have gotten a lot of thumbs up and not really any thumbs down, just like one or something. And seems to be fairly broad support, I guess. Good. Just had baby goats, so working at keeping them warm. Sheila, you are only supposed to give birth to humans. If you're having baby goats, you're sleeping with the wrong guy. The one you're supposed to sleep with lives inside the house. Okay, so that's Sheila's baby goats. And I wish I had some baby goats. That sounds absolutely adorable, frankly. So, anyway, ENTJs, ENTPs, it's really a TE-TI battle. And what we see on the TE side is, for ENTJ anyway, a determination to process things by symbols of competency rather than actual competency, and to master displaying the symbols of competency. So, nothing wrong with that, because that's probably a more effective way to deal with the world in general. Most people are bypassing the full deliberative process to some extent or another. NI is a way of bypassing a deliberative process. SI is a way of bypassing a deliberative process. They work in conjunction with interface functions because they both want to bypass that deliberative process. They want to be responsive in the moment. They don't want to have to pull out of the real-time flow and process things. That's why FE and TE both provide heuristics that replace deliberation. So TE's heuristic is efficacy on measurable criteria, and that would be subscribers, money, whatever. And the symbols, and of course, any interface type, whether it's an FE-DOM or a TE-DOM, is going to be good at the other interface form as well, at least reasonably good at it. So we see in C.S. Joseph, for example, he's pretty good at the FE, reasonably good at it, but it's not on the front of his stack. You can tell it's not on the front of his stack because people who are a little bit more nuanced in their FE are going to be like, you're kind of a douche. So if I'm an INFJ, is take why my memory stinks, or can any type have poor long-term memory? Well, I suppose any type could potentially have poor long-term memory. I think it's least likely to occur in SI DOMs to have poor long-term memory. Kimberly certainly seems steeped in her memories a lot. It's definitely the case that INFJs, ENFJs and INFJs, ENTJs, and INTJs are going to have iffy memory stuff going on. Most likely, if you have really iffy memory, then you're more likely to be an ENFJ or an ENTJ, because they have 7th slot SI. 7th slot SI is as bad as it can get as far as the memory in the past and the knowing through the self goes. So it depends how bad it is. INFJ, though, also tends to not prioritize their individual memories or particulars and just the takeaways from what they've learned about the world. So if your childhood is just a blur, little snippets, you might be an ENFJ. Certainly plausible. So the thing is, I don't dislike all ENTJs, and I'm rather fond of Chad Crandall. I think he's a good ENTJ. Consider him friendly acquaintance, I guess. And I don't want to be shitting on ENTJs in general. I don't think that ENTJs are bad people or anything. I just think that they get themselves in over their head a little bit. It's like there needs to be a certain amount of awareness from TE Dom, like an ENTJ or an ESEJ, of the TI that they're ignoring. So you ideally, C.S. Joseph wants his shit to be logically consistent, and he's going to validate externals on logical consistency in general. But in this instance, it's like I pose too much of not a threat exactly, but he can't work with. He's sort of inherently going to validate me because I'm being very logically consistent. But at the same time, he's going to kind of invalidate me because he doesn't like the NE. It's countervalued. And so it's worth noting that those things. I just got distracted by Von Chase. If personality is an habit, can it be changed? Personality cannot be, your type can't be changed. And the reason is it's not exactly a habit. Your attentional manners aren't, although they are habitual. It's better to call them reflexive, because the thing is, you are becoming as you're attending. So what that means is, as I'm attending as a little kid, I'm becoming an entity that attends in that fashion. And I start to settle into those modalities of attentional habits. Nobody, when they're a little kid, is being very metacognitive about their own attentional habits. So they fall into natural, what's most comfortable and natural reflexively, and begin being that person. By the time people are capable of really metacognating about their own attentional manners, it's deeply embedded. There's no way you're gonna switch up how you attend to things, because, well, for example, your program function, your dominant function, your base function, whatever you want to call it, the only way you can really understand what it would be to exist in life through some modality other than that is to understand it through your fourth, which are two sides of the same coin. You can't even conceive of a reality in which you're not, like, for example, for me, which I encounter things like that and I am at a loss, right? If you ask me that question, I haven't really thought about that question before. It's a good question in the sense that it says, I've heard you describe this as habitual before, Eric. And so if it's habit, we know habits can be changed. So why can we change your personality type? It's a good, challenging TI style question. If I didn't have NE in the dominant slot, if I wasn't habitually and reflexively ideating, it might have caught me off guard and I wouldn't know what to do with it. But I just immediately start answering it with from a variety of different ideational angles. So I would say no, it can't be changed. Carl Jung said in that video today, the personality is not static. Well, personality is not static, but I don't know if he meant personality type is not static. I think type is static. Like, nobody changes their type over the course of their life, because it would mean literally changing into a different human being. And it's not possible. How does multiple personality work in MBTI then? I mean, I don't really believe in multiple personalities. Like, people have multiple personality disorder where they act like different people and stuff. I'm not at all convinced that's real. If it is, then, I mean, I would say any kind of mental illness is going to disrupt or muddy any understanding of personality type, because personality type presumes somebody operating more or less in a normal range of possible attentional manners. Trained debater ENFP. Who's a trained debater ENFP? Joel and Nathan Henry? I've had some ENFP debaters. They're not bad. They can hang. They're not great. They're not naturally. No, I'm not an ENFP. But that's funny. If I were an ENFP, I wouldn't be calculating everything with TI. So let's imagine for a second that I am an ENFP. If I were an ENFP and I were accused of being, but I thought I were an ENTP, okay? If I were an ENFP who thought I was an ENTP, and you said, there's no way you're an ENTP, Eric. You're a trained debater ENFP. My response to that would be, okay, so if it's the result of my training in debate, well, that's what I would say about an ENTP. As an ENFP, I guess I would say something like, you don't know me, or that's not true, or you're not respecting my values, or something like that, trained or not. I've had ENFP debaters. They definitely think very differently. Take a much more TE approach than I do, for sure. And remember also, I wasn't trained in debate. I didn't have a debate coach, frankly. I had a speech coach, and he didn't know anything about it. I figured it out and taught my partner. And when I became a coach, nobody coached me how to coach either. I basically forgotten the mechanics of debate, but I figured it out and became highly successful at it. I mean, the most important thing I would say is it's just a lack of clarity about my own feelings. Can someone be XXX but be a true introvert? I mean, sure, anybody can be typed wrong. Can you critique CSJ the way he types celebrities because he typed Oprah Winfrey as ESFJ when she's clearly an NFJ, for example? Yes, she definitely is an ENFJ, and I will try to get around to it. Joel Nathan Henry, male version of so malicious. Well, you misspelled malicious, but are you asking me if I am a male version of so malicious? The answer is no. I think I already answered that question or addressed it. I mean, people have tried to type me as a couple of times. People have tried to type me as something other than HP. Like, yeah, I know. Thanks. This is the difference between me now that I've emerged from my shadow self, and me before when I was just I wasn't a good ENTP. I was too much like an ENTP. But now I'm getting more like an ENTJ. I'm finally learning how to be a proper ENTP. Let's see. Do ENFPs and INFPs use the "you don't know me" line just when they're stressed out? I think I'm pretty sure that's not how she spells it, Joel Nathan Henry. Her name's Melissa. That's why she's so malicious. She doesn't spell it M-A. Do ENFPs and INFPs use it? They use it when they're being pushed on something. The other thing that you'll hear from ENFPs especially is, where are you going with this? I want to know where you're going with your line of questioning before I start to answer it, because I don't want you to use a line of questioning to test it against the universal metric. Let's see. Mental illness or ESFP, a question that has boggled the minds of typologists for decades. Speaking of ESFPs, I got some news today, and I don't mean to open this up as a subject of ridicule at all, rather as I'm actually a little bit concerned, frankly.
Information that people were
wanting. But information that people might be interested in. So it turns out that Brittany has been arrested, or was arrested, for domestic violence. Somebody on Facebook was worrying about her or wondering about her. It had gotten had gotten somehow confused about that or whatever. But the person was concerned about where she'd gone, why we hadn't heard anything from her, and if she was still okay or something like that. So she Googled her, and lo and behold, she was arrested not super long time ago for domestic violence. So that was interesting. That's ESFP flying off the handle, I guess. You're right, my bad, says Joel Nathan Henry. Thank you for acknowledging that. That's very TI of you. Let's see. Gotta love NTP humor. I like it. I'm biased. Okay, it's time for a short bong rip. Now, for those of you who are concerned about my level of expertise, please avert your eyes while I'm doing this because apparently it causes me to lose credibility in the eyes of others when I smoke marijuana. Why that would cause me to lose credibility, I'm not quite sure. How would an ENTJ with ADHD and chronic... I have no idea. I mean, I wouldn't expect an ENTJ to be particularly subject to depression simply because of the lack of particularism. ADHD, maybe, but as a TDOM, I doubt it. I would say that generally ADHD people are going to be NE and SE DOMs. Yeah, I hope she figures that things out too. I don't wish ill on her at all. And while I found the news interesting, I certainly didn't take any pleasure in it, and made me worry a little bit about her and wonder if maybe I should. I don't know what I could possibly do though. So. Oh, thank you, Indican Junkie. I appreciate it. So maybe it balances out the credibility overall. Some people give me a little bit of added cred. Some people take away some cred. I don't think C.S. Joseph has either ADHD or depression. I think that C.S. Joseph has painted himself into a bit of a corner. And I kind of feel bad for him because he's been pushing this wrong approach to typology for quite some time now. Has built up quite an audience. And for whatever reason, I didn't do him the favor of calling him out on his shit early on, where he had a chance to sort of switch it up, you know? So now he's stuck with this wrongness that he's been pushing hard, and he can't really step back from it. He can't go now, okay, you're right, I'm an ENTJ, because that talk about credibility losing, you know. Well, I'm in a number of different shadows, Bruce Wayne. I got 1 foot in my INTJ shadow, 1 foot in my ESFP shadow, 1 arm in my ISTP shadow, and 1 arm in my ENFP shadow. So,
and 1 on your ENTPness.
Yeah, I got some shadows on my ENTPness as well. Is Trump an ESTP? Yes, I believe he is an ESTP. He seems to me to have very clear 3rd slot FE. He really wants to be affirmed and praised by other people, and you know, public opinion is more important to him than anything else, frankly.
Did you get your torch purple and stuff?
Yes, I did. I left it in the car though. And I mean, I don't see the FI. I see TI that he uses in very self-serving ways, and I see SE. And he's never gotten with anything like a duel. He's got nobody giving him any NI that he trusts or believes or wiser than he. I just find him a fairly tragic character because he clearly was too privileged in some ways to really actualize. Like he never learned to be objectively self-critical in a meaningful way. He's just critical about how shit's going to play. And so, I mean, to that extent, you could say, well, that's contraindicative of Tool TI. Maybe he's not an ESTP, but I just don't see what else it could be. He's SE Dom, he's 3rd slot FE. That's it makes him an ESTP. I couldn't imagine being arrested. I've never even had a ticket. Guess I'm going to go to 2 shoes. I got arrested in Oklahoma. For what? Weed. For possession of weed. Can you believe that shit?
2 shoes.
Okay, now
McDonald's cup.
move my McDonald's cup. Oh, you don't want it in this. Oh, I see. Okay, so is EJ or NT all the types combined? No, he's an ENTP. ENTJ almost seems to be consciously portraying an ENTP, and it comes across very awkward. He might be trying to. He's not doing a very good job of it. Where would FE be in the stack if someone absorbs the emotions of others? Probably fifth. Probably an FI Dom. FE is not the thing that absorbs the emotions of others. FE is about perception management, understanding how shit's going to play, a bunch of other stuff, social stuff like that. Angang Tar. I've been arrested multiple times, mostly while drunk, because FTP. What's FTP mean? Fuck the police? Oh, well. Try to avoid that. Try not to drink so much. Smoke weed instead. Better for you. But if you had to describe an ENTJ with ADHD, how would you do it? As you said, they look like SE DOMs. Yeah, I don't even know. The thing is, you'd expect an ENTJ to be busy all the time. And if they're saying that it's because they're too hyper, they might try to attribute ADHD to themselves, but I think that's just because they don't understand what it is. So, I mean, I don't know. What is Tool Any? Is there a vid on that? I missed so many videos. Wow. I've got like 5,000 of them, Jerry Saravia, so that doesn't surprise me. Tool Any is very different in the INTP and INFP. INFPs are kind of more, in some ways, more like ENTPs. They're typically more creatively free. And I think INTPs have a struggle getting loose and being real and not overthinking their music and art. In contrast, INTPs are the other way when it comes to logic and analysis. So that's, in that regard, they're more like ENTPs, I guess, or ENTPs are more like them, maybe, because they use their NE to find ways to destroy things, basically. In other words, I will find a way to negate this with words, is INTP and ENTP specialty. It's their most natural behavior. I've been in a car crash, but nothing else bad. Well, one car crash, that's not too bad, unless it was a really, really bad car crash. Were you driving? I've been in a few car crashes. Volunteers, it's very likely, but I think he's had some sort of mental breakdown. That makes it more difficult for a true type to come to light, but it isn't impossible to type them. It's funny because he was shitting on the MBTI test, but ironically, that test typed him INTJ, which is way closer to his actual type. Yeah, he said before, like, he's never gotten ENTP on a test. Okay, well, I mean, I agree tests aren't that reliable, but I mean, usually they're not reliable because they tell you what you want to hear too much because you're gaming them. You're saying they're unreliable because they're telling you what you don't want to hear. That's a good sign that the test is probably more accurate than you think. FTP coming straight from the underground. Young Eric got it bad because I'm brown. Fucking with me because I'm a teenager with a little bit of gold and a pager. Still illegal in New Zealand. Yeah, Curtis, haha. Sherlock Holmes? 3 question marks? I don't know. I agree completely on your view on FI and FE. I think it should be mentioned, by the way, that those domes are each capable of the opposite as well. That those domes? What domes? Marijuana should be legal. I'm going to guess that Eric is also a proponent of this. Yes, of course. It is legal here in California. What type is most likely to be an incel? Probably FE polar, INTJ, ISTJ. But INTJ finds a way often enough. I would say ISTJ maybe like it's quite possible. The neurotic types can be the NTs sometimes, the NTPs especially. We're not brave with chicks, NTPs. It depends on personal experience too. We're subject to particularist damage because we're SI. What's a good romantic match for a female INTJ? Neither C.S. Joseph nor Socionics seems right to me. Okay, well, the Socionics answer would be ESFP. If you're saying you don't want to be with an ESFP because, well, say no more. If you're saying you don't want to be with an ESFP, I get that. I don't want to be with an ESFP, but there are cool ones that exist in the world. Most of them aren't that crazy.
That's not what she's saying. What she's saying is that it doesn't feel right. So what would be her type for an INFP?
She's an INTJ.
An INTJ.
Well, if you don't want a male ESFP, then I would suggest ISFP. Introvert can work. Does ISFP sound better for you? ISFP, they've got FI first. You got your FI third. That's a pretty FI friendly environment there. You're going to probably do pretty well with that, with your hidden agenda. You're seeking SE. They're providing SE with their tool functions. Not quite dominant, not really providing it all the time naturally, but still it's pretty good. Your polar's FE, and the ISFP is going to ignore FE, so that's not going to be a problem necessarily. They got 6-slot SI. You got 8-slot S. That's not totally incompatible. ISFP seems a good choice. I'd say go for an ISFP, dude.
Thank you for answering the question correctly.
You're welcome. Kat, thank you for answering. How do you tell ENTPs from ENFPs? Well, you just got to test their TI. It's very straightforward. You just say, here's some logic questions. And if they don't get the concept, then they're definitely not an ENTP. If you ask them the soccer question, the famous soccer question is pretty straightforward. Most people who don't have polar TI don't have any problem with it. And if you go, all right, listen, if Judy doesn't get hurt in practice today, then she will play in the soccer game tomorrow. But if she does get hurt in practice today, then she won't play in the game tomorrow. Now, if she does play in the game tomorrow, then either mom or dad will watch her play, but not both. And mom's out of town this weekend, and therefore not in the vicinity of her game when it occurs. Lastly, she does not hurt herself at practice. What can we conclude? Now, when you ask a question like that, there are a couple of different valid conclusions, maybe even more than a couple if you factor in the premises as valid statements to make regarding the set of information you have. But the most correct answer is dad watches you play. Or some people say she plays in the game on Saturday. And then I have to ask, well, who and anything else? And I go, and dad watches her play. Okay, well, those are good TI answers. People who have polar TI will answer things like,
do I have polar TI?
No. We'll answer it with things like, she likes soccer? Or mom works hard? It's like they don't get the concept of it, right? So that's one way you can easily enough tell ENTPs from ENFPs apart. Ask them some TI questions. Ask them a few of them if you have any confusion about it. And it should be pretty straightforward, ultimately, what they are. EJRND hates ENTPs. I know. I schooled the shit out of him, too, one time. He made a video about how ESTPs are better than ENTPs. And I made a video saying, you gotta be fucking kidding me. But, I was a lot more like Piao Piao back then. Who do you find you disagree with more, C.S. Joseph or Dave Superpower? C.S. Joseph. I mean, C.S. Joseph's nuts, dude, as far as his type theory. He says, somebody told me today, and I haven't heard this from C.S. Joseph's mouth himself, but I have no reason to doubt it, and maybe somebody else here can confirm the veracity of it, that he claims he turned into an ENTP when he was 26 years old. INTPs are incels, says Angang Tier. Walter Wiseman, FI DOMs and FE DOMs are pretty capable of the opposite feeling function as well, was I meant. Yeah, I agree with you there. I agree. But they're pretty capable of it, but they're also ignoring, which is a weird relationship one has with one's fifth. And so would probably be SE polar. I would agree with that, or at least S polar. I think they're much more likely to be SE polar. Incels are not going to be ENFJs or ENTJs, so it's going to be SE polar. Queen Bee, CS Justice says he's INTJ is compatible with ENTP. That one seems reasonable. INTP, ESFJ, and ISFJ, I don't agree with those three. I mean, I also agree that INTJ is compatible with ENTP, but ENTP is compatible with almost everybody. Like, we're the most adaptable types, really. And if you look at the stats and stuff on it, they've done some, at least in socionic stuff, it shows that ENTPs basically complain the least and adapt the most or something. And
Such a lie.
Well, I guess we'd have to compare against how somebody not an ENTP would react to this stuff. You know, and that's the only way we'd be able to know for sure. How do you tell TI from TE DOMs? That should be pretty straightforward. I mean, the thing about that is a TI DOM is going to be fundamentally negationary in their approach to the world. They're not going to be out front saying, guys, let's do this, let's do that, right? They're not going to be all, here's the best way to be, here's the best way to do, you should listen to me, yada, yada, yada. That's TE DOMs. TI DOMs are going to sit back, too cool for school, and tear the TE DOM down from the back of the room with an occasional cutting remark or dismissal of the logic of their plan. Sometimes can cause a whole thing to collapse because of their successful parsing out the foundation of things. Let me see here. On the humanetrics test, wait, I want to see. Let me go back to this INTJ question. Who else is compatible with INTJ besides ENTP? Maybe INTP, ESFJ, ISFJ. I would say ISFJ. No way. That's tool function FE versus polar FE. That's death. That's what Kimberly's first marriage was. Brian Lee was INTJ, and she didn't like that marriage very much, I don't think. Now, granted, at the moment, she doesn't seem to like this one very much either. But that's just at the moment. She'll be cheered up in the morning, I'm sure, and I will too, and we'll be fine. And keep that in mind, Kim. We're just a little bit snappy at each other. It's not the end of the world.
Let me go on vacation.
I'm not stopping you for the millionth time. ESFJ. Well, ESFJ with their dominant FE, again, all their nature is going to fall on deaf ears regarding the INTJ, and that's not going to work. INTP, TIT, NENI, SI, yeah, but no. It's TINI, then NETE, and then SI, FI, and then FE, and SE. Well, I mean, INTP and INTJ might work okay. I mean, they're going to constantly be seeing things through different frames of reference. So that's going to cause conflict. But if they work together, they could be quite a powerful team. So that's a possibility. C.S. Joseph seems kind of culty. Yeah, a little bit. INTJs with ENFPs is an interesting pairing. I mean, that might be an interesting pairing too. That's closer to what INTJ is supposed to have, quote unquote. If INTJ is supposed to have ESFP, but they don't want ESFP, ENFP is a good second choice. Joel Nathan Henry. That's not what he said. Oh, about his type. No, he didn't say he became one of 26. If that's the case, I stand corrected. Like I said, I didn't hear it from him directly. I heard it from another source. Can you clarify what he did say? I didn't know you have a cat. Where's the chicken, by the way? Chicken's asleep. We have 4 cats. I'm unusual. We have Normal, Mason, Violet, and PP. I'm usually fairly laid back. When I get poor customer service, I get in, call them out, but I do it nicely. Which function causes me to get so mad? That sounds like an ESFJ. I mean, my ex-wife used to do that, just like what you're saying. Least likely to get along with ENTPs? Well,
ISFJ.
It really depends on the circumstances. If you're just talking about like, let's hang out at a party, then I don't know. ENTP tends to get along pretty well with people, but I would guess we'd least well get along with some sort of TE Dom, probably ESTJ or something. We might not get along well with ESTP or ESFP either in this context, because I think there's a certain competitiveness between the action types. But in other contexts, like in a workplace environment, I think we're going to least well get along with people who are making a lot of arbitrary decisions, maybe like a lot of FI tool use, maybe. I can tell you, like in a teaching capacity, when I have students, I don't get along well with ESTPs usually, and I don't get along well with ESFPs usually, and I may or may not get along well with
ISFJ.
Other SFPs. I'll typically get along fine with ISFJ, with ESFJ. My quadramates, obviously, I get along fine with. Sleep deprivation effects on use of functions. That radio jockey that did the live experiment became almost a different person. I've not heard about that live experiment or that radio jockey, but I will tell you how I can very easily tell you how sleep deprivation affects my use of functions anyway. Basically, if I don't sleep enough, a couple of things happen. So, and as I get older, I really need the full amount of sleep, or as close to it as I can get. If I don't get enough sleep, I start getting a little more fussy, or a little less happy-go-lucky. Kim's very sensitive to my mood, so because of her tool function FE, and if she feels like I'm not in a very good mood or I'm not being my normal self, she's gonna read a lot into that, even though it doesn't really have anything to do with her, you know. And then, well, whatever happens after that doesn't matter. The point is, so I have plenty of experience with my moods shifting and recognizing them as relating to a lot of SI stuff for me, and not really anything else. As I get a little older and wiser, I recognize, okay, this is just me being whatever. It doesn't change the fact that it's going to impact those around me, though. So if I'm a little bit fussy, Kim's going to get kind of attacky, and you know, that's the only person I can really change is myself. So I keep trying to figure out the best adjustments to make as best I can. FI DOMs have to answer TI questions to save loved ones. Will they succeed? FI DOMs have pretty good TI because they're operators. So if you have one judging function as your dominant function, you're pretty good at the other one too. Just like I'm pretty good at SE, and I'm an NE DOM, certain kinds of SE. So the answer is yes. FI DOMs will be able to do that. INFPs way better than ISFPs, but ISFPs, they might not be able to answer the TI questions, but they'll change the scenario so they no longer have to answer them because everybody around them is dead, except for their loved ones. That's not what he said. What he said was actually even crazier. He said he was living in his INTJ shadow for most of his life, then he finally returned to his ENTP ego. So what does that mean exactly? Does that mean for most of his life he was attending via introverted intuition, then extroverted thinking, and then introverted feeling, and then extroverted sensing? But then when he matured, he attended in an entirely different way?
Didn't he have that gastric bypass surgery or lap band or something?
I don't know. I heard for the first time today that he had. This is the first time I'd ever heard anything about it at all. Was that he had overcome obesity?
Okay, so he's probably going to use that as an excuse and say that when he was his younger self in his fat body, that he wasn't able to really be who he was, and now that he's thinner.
Okay, but a personality type is about attentional manners. It's a habit of attentional manners, and it's the being that you are. The entity that you are comprises an expression of self through attentional manners. And if you attend for most of your life through, say, a dominant function of introverted intuition, then if somehow magically you could shift to attending by extroverted intuition, then you'd be like a baby again, completely incompetent at doing the things that you've spent decades practicing. So let's scrap all this decades of practice that I put into this and somehow magically be a different person so that I automatically approach everything through a different manner of attention than I ever had before. Even if you could do that, it would be like I'm going to start back over as a toddler now, totally incompetent at these things. Is that a cat? Yes, it's a cat. That's Violet. My high school business teacher said that I should touch him down there. And you said, no, teacher. Okay. Said that personality type can only change due to traumatic experience. I agree with that. I do think personality type can change due to traumatic experience. I think that the most immediate and natural response for everybody in the face of trauma is to switch their first and fourth in terms of prioritization. So if you go 90% 1, 10% 4 normal, when you deal with trauma, you switch it and you go 90% 4, 10% 1. Because your fourth function is always the thing that cleans up after, saves you from, and is the alternative to your dominant nature.
I did a switcheroo. I pulled a switcheroo.
When?
Probably in my life when I went through all that trauma.
Okay, so what do you think happened?
I became fightier.
You became fightier?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do think Enneagram type has the ability to switch. I don't think Enneagram type you're locked into. I think you're locked into your first number probably, but not your second and third and your tri-type. So I would believe that Kimberly became an 8 in her tri-type. But all right, so let's continue on. You should make a test that hits every type's 7th function blind spot. It's a good suggestion, Johnny Two Guns. It's tough for certain things to test them. It can be really tough to test FI directly on a written test. It can be tough to test NI. It can be tough to test SE on written tests as well. So Team ENTP and INFJ. I mean, Team ENTP plus INFJ makes a great team. Do they make a great romantic partnership? I don't think they would long term, ultimately. But they make a great team for media making and stuff. I really enjoyed working with Anthony again this evening. I made a video on where he type policed Carl Jung, and he's fun to make videos with. And I feel like I'm in safe hands working with him. Like I trust his discretion and his judgment, even though he's young. That's one of the advantages of being an INFJ is you master that into things early. ENFP are great for INTJ. All right, so there's another endorsement for ENFP. ENFP seem too flirty for a female INTJ. Think a male INTJ can handle a female ENFP? Depends. I mean, I agree. ENFPs are a little scary because I don't really have a lot of faith in the fidelity of FI types. But maybe that's a stereotype. I never got along with my ESFJ mom. We never agree on something. Based on our interactions, is it possible for you to guess on my functions? Well, I mean, duels are funny when you got interface deliberator duels like that. So, for example, you could, in theory, be an INTP and not get along with your ESFJ mom, even though she's your dual. And the reason for that is because you're going to prioritize TI so heavy early in your life that you're going to be more offended by her lack of logic than you are pleased by her provision of FE. So it's in theory even possible that you could be an INTP and not get along with your mom. The other types that wouldn't get along with the ESFJ would potentially be ENFP, ESFP, because they countervalue the dominant function. It seems like ENTJ get by and achieve based on a simple idea and sheer willpower, whereas INTP and ENTP may be more accurate, but bog themselves down with ideas to the point of inaction. I would say in general that that's more or less right. ENTP may or may not bog themselves down to the point of inaction. The problem isn't inaction for ENTPs usually. It's a failure to stay the course, basically, which is what ENTJ has no problem doing. There is C.S. Joseph staying the course for the duration of his channel and doing his thing that he started. And what did he say he was on? Like, the episode I watched today, he indicated that it was season 13, episode 2, I believe. Do you think he has all of his seasons set up like that? Season 1, episode 1, 2, 3, a bunch of episodes.
He said this is season 15, but it's actually 13.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly don't have things set up in seasons. And I don't know what number whatever thing is until, like, when I upload the next part of the cognitive function books, I'm going to remember the next time that it's 12. It's part 12. But today, when and the reason is because I made this thumbnail for it that says part 11. I can picture it kind of in my head. So I know I'm going to remember next time it's part 12. But this time, when I went to go see what part it was, I had to look at the last part because I don't remember what part it is. I'm just starting where I left off before,
You can barely keep track of your pants.
It's true. They're constantly flying asunder every which way. Let me scroll down a bit here. He was talking about his shadow cognitive functions, INTJ realizing at 26 and accepting that he is an ENTP. So was he always an ENTP or was he before an INTJ? Did he attend via the functions of an INTJ before? And if not, then what does it mean to say he was in a shadow INTJ? And if in fact he is now accepted that he's an ENTP, so was he always an ENTP then, but was in denial of it? Was he lying to himself that he was an INTJ? Is he lying to us now that he was an INTJ? I don't understand. How does sense of humor play into dual relations, or is it unrelated to type? Sense of humor is not unrelated to type, and it plays into dual relations potentially quite a bit. One of the great things about me and Kimberly is that we laugh a lot, and sometimes we laugh really hard. And have a great time rolling around in the bed and stuff. Laughing, I mean, just with jokes or whatever.
Rolling around on the bed. We rarely do that. Well, you do that.
Do you think INFJ have a certain type of humor? I think that's one of the ways in which they're very much like Alpha Quadra. And I've often said that they're the most Alpha Quadra-y non-Alpha Quadra type. So they're a lot like ENTPs. ENTPs and INFJs can sometimes rip off each other very effectively and have very similar senses of humor. It's just that ENTPs are going to be much more active with it. INFJs are much more comfortable in a role where they can sit back and sharpshoot, basically. Wait for moments, drop in, boom, drop some bombs here and there, and not have to be relied upon to produce all the ideational yammer. How does FI work in INTPs? 8 slot function means it's balanced, it's insecure, so they're better at it than they think they are. If you bust their chops about their FI, they will internalize that, but they will also attack. And it's stronger than they think in the sense that they typically use it only in appropriate circumstances. They say where it's appropriate to use their FI to make decisions, such as with relationships and stuff, they'll use it. sort of reflexively, not very consciously, and successfully usually, and they won't use it in other contexts. Don't we have all 8 cognitive functions, or is it just 4? We do all have all 8, but the thing about that is they fit together differently in a value matrix than depending on the slots. So the slots define the mechanics of cognitive functions. Having all 8 means something specific. For example, the fact that I have extroverted intuition in the dominant slot means I'm devoting most of my attentional energy towards the ideational process and not towards the keeping track of the ideas I've come up with process. So the key thing to note there is that the relationship between the two functions are exclusive. The tool function, for example, is, for me, TI. What that necessarily means is that I am judging them based on a logical calculus designed to withstand the muster of other parties, not myself. In other words, a universalist or external calculi is done internally, obviously, but if it to be logically, to withstand muster logically means to withstand other people's critique, not my own. Whereas FI says, I need to use an interested calculus. I need this decision to withstand my own critique, not other people's. So in that capacity, yes, we have all 8 functions and everybody uses them sometimes, but the extent to which one can use them to consciously or willfully or intentionally attend is very much limited by the slot placement. So things on the back end of your stack are manners of attention that, because you have reflexively imprinted upon yourself a clarity about things regarding using a certain manner of attention, because you've done it consistently throughout your life, then as a consequence, the other kinds of attentional manners have accordingly dim understandings and lack of willfulness and lack of intentionality. It's not so much that you don't have all 8 functions. That's not true. You do, but it's that they aren't superpowers. They aren't skills you develop. They're who you are. Okay, it's a manner of attention. It's not a skill set. So, okay. You know who I think Joel Nathan Henry is? You guys, and I think so too.
Ooh.
Okay. Are children in a constant flux of cognitive functions that develop their personality? I don't think so. I think they're probably born with it. Eric, out of curiosity, how many FI DOMs do you know to be cheaters? Just weird hearing you say that because fidelity is something I greatly value. A few. I've known a few, more than a few. I'm not saying that's not indicative of anything. That may be just my SI bias right there. I'm saying, well, in my personal experience, I've known some FI users who were kind of squirrely and prone to cheating, because, and it would make sense that they would be, because let's say you're using your tool function, and in the moment you really, really are feeling this person, and you really, really want to take it to the next level. Well, if I'm in a circumstance like that, I'm going to use TI and go, I'm going to use NETI and go, there's no way I'm doing this because I can't win any of the arguments about this. I will lose all the arguments. So no way. I refuse to lose all the arguments. So no, I'm not cheating. Because I don't care what I feel about it. I know what I feel about that. I feel very strongly about losing all the arguments. So Eric, okay, that one. But it's wrong of me to try to paint FI people as somehow less faithful. I don't know that. And yeah. And that's just my personal experience. Joel Nathan Henry, but what if someone doesn't know their type? CS just said the 4th slot function is stronger than the 2nd slot or in the 1st when 4th is aspiring. I mean, I would say it's a mistake to think of those in terms of strength, right? It's like the 1st and the 4th are 2 sides of the same coin. The 1st, for me, ideates, and the 4th keeps track of the ideation. So, in other words, when I've been traumatized, I stop coming up with new ideas, and I just deal with my existing resources, try to nest, try to take care of myself. That makes sense, right? And so as a consequence, I'm definitely not coming up with as many ideas because there is an exclusive quality to the thing. The idea that the 4th slot is stronger than the 2nd slot, well, even if you are in that state of being, that's why we shouldn't use the term strength. It's really frequency of use or reflexiveness of attentional direction. So yeah, your SI can become a primary focus. For me, your fourth slot function can become a primary focus of your attention in the immediate aftermath of trauma. But even then, you're not switching types. You're just an ENTP who's switched into repair mode. And repair mode in that capacity means that I don't need to come up with any more ideas right now. I need to focus on what I existingly have and take advantage of my existing resources. And otherwise, I basically have overreached. For an action type, that's what it's going to mean to be subject to extreme fourth slot. Is you probably overreached. Now, it may not be your fault and you haven't overreached at all, but that's the natural reaction to it anyway. Is that to pull back into SI. For SI DOMs, if they're experiencing trauma, they need to get out of the way they always are with the past and their sense of taking care of their animal self, and they need to ideate their way out and say, well, I need new ideas to free myself from this morass. So you can see why it would be the case if in the immediate aftermath of trauma that somebody would naturally turn to their fourth function and away from their dominant. But the second slot function is your tool function. So it's not a matter of strength. It's a matter of it is the thing you use to solve all problems reflexively, automatically, but it's intentional and willful. It's not unconscious in any sense. So you can sort of put it away as well. You don't have to be solving problems. However, that's not going to change even in the aftermath of trauma. Your third slot function is not going to suddenly switch with your second and you become the ISFJ. It doesn't work like that. The reason the 1 and 4 can switch like that is because they are two sides of the same coin when they're in the 1 and 4 slot. They function necessarily in collaboration with each other and complements to each other, but they have to take turns, alternate. They can't work concurrently. I mean, usually the alternate is very, very fast, like you remember, and you ideate, remember, ideate, remember, ideate. It's an interaction between action and knowledge. Okay, so I think he says your inferior can be greater than your dominant if you train it. Well, that's insane. I mean, train it. You are a person who is paying attention in certain ways. Now, I'm currently paying attention to TI. I am saying that logically doesn't make any sense because we need to go back to the definition of what it means to cognate, what it means to have an attentional manner. I'm paying attention right now to the TI of the language, that is to say the logical consistency of it. I could instead pay attention to everybody's FE perceptions of me as being a cooperative, proactive, wanting to work together kind of guy. You know, well, C.S. Joseph and I just have different opinions about this, and I'm not, I really like the guy. I think he has a lot of great things to say, and I could do all that shit. I could be paying attention to all that stuff. If I'd been paying attention to all that stuff all along, and my introverted intuition, then I'd be an INFJ. But I'm not paying attention to that stuff. Now, I want to know when he says that, you mean that? He clearly doesn't, because that's clearly not what he's doing. So, I mean, he just doesn't understand. He doesn't understand that this is not a superpower. This is not a skill you have. This is not something that you own that you can train. You are paying attention in one way or another. If you choose to pay attention in ways that are not natural and reflexive to you, you are choosing to engage in some period of your life in a weaker fashion, a less capable fashion than you would otherwise spend that period of your life. You have a finite number of hours in which to attend, and every bit of attention you pay develops that skill and makes it more and more embedded as who you are. You can't, the idea of switching late in life or accepting late in life that your former way of paying attention was wrong and now you pay attention totally differently, it's nuts. It's absolutely nuts.
Yeah, JNH. I mean, CSJ.
Daddy one says, CSJ says that one, right? I think by focusing on the thing you are worst at is a terrible strategy. I agree completely. It just doesn't make sense because his system to type people is wrong. Well, he's typed people as strange things. I think he typed Eminem as Oh, who do you type is it? ISTJ? Somebody. It's like I don't know. Somebody is definitely not an ISTJ. Eric, have you ever read Heart of Darkness? Yeah, I've read Heart of Darkness. Did I like it when you read it? No, I didn't like it. I thought it was dull or just it didn't do it for me. But it's been a long time, so I don't remember. Hi, Jen, chaotically minimal. Sorry for the last comment. Let's focus for a moment on whatever. And each dual relationship has one type of the double knower. How might this affect relationships, if at all? Really? Is that true? Which one is mine? Who's the double what? She's a double something? Let's see. FETI. Oh, right. I see. So she's a double deliberator. Okay, Joel Nathan Henry. CSJJNH, whatever. CSJ types Eminem as an ISTP. Now, if this doesn't tell you in no uncertain terms that he has no idea what extroverted intuition is, then I don't know what could possibly tell you. Eminem clearly is an extroverted intuitor. He's a freestyle rapper. He comes up with shit tons of ideas. Ben Shapiro is an ENTP. Eminem is also an ENTP. Now, the reason why he typed them both wrong is because he has no idea what extroverted intuition is. He thinks it doesn't matter if you come up with ideas or not. You can still be extroverted intuition. Yeah, it matters, C.S. Joseph. It matters quite a bit. And your lame-ass jokes do not count as extroverted intuition. Yeah, ISTPs have no imagination is exactly right. They are not creative. They are not improvisational. They are not wordsmiths. Walter, I would assume ISFPs are more likely to cheat due to SE compared to the NE and INFPs. I mean, it's very rare I find I connect with someone, so when I do, I cherish that. It would make zero sense. Right. Well, if you're happy in your relationship, I guess the ones I'm referring to weren't necessarily in their relationships for one reason or another. Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel bad for the guy too. My goal was never to just, bully him or anything. I just, the thing is, he's so fair game. He's got like twice as many subscribers as me. I don't know why I'm feeling bad. It's like he's totally fair game. He's as fair game as they get. He's out there going, guys, and having twice as many subscribers as me, and people selling people a load of bullshit. So I don't know why I'm feeling bad. I just think, God, he's just so he's not in any position to win any of these arguments. He's got some things wrong, and he's got himself in a corner. I sort of feel like, hey, okay. You took a test the other day at Human Metrics. Is that a decent test? I don't know. I haven't taken it for a while. Matthew Alistair, and Eminem is not FI. He's totally not FI. If he were FI, he wouldn't have all those songs about killing people and raping people and you don't want to fuck with Shady. That song? Think about the lyrics in that at the beginning part. There's no way he's an FI. Does double function type really work that way? I thought it had to do with the relationship between the metaphysical, physical first slot and the opposite attitude of the third. Right. So the first and the sixth have the same attitude, and the third has the opposite attitude, which is what causes the first which is what causes the sixth to be overvalued compared to other six slot functions, because the person is going to lean naturally towards functions that have the same attitude as the same, what do they call it? The same aspect as the dominant. So that would be, ISFJ would be a double deliberator in the sense that her hidden agenda is TI and her sixth slot function is FI. Now, in reality, what I experienced with Kim is that means that means basically that she's very fretful and very concerned. And if she's a double, it makes perfect sense, actually. I mean, even though she's a knowing type, and I'm always busting her chops for knowing too much, what really I'm busting her chops for is FIing too much, because she's voicing her feelings about things and she's not doing the TI part. So she's over prioritizing the 6. She's doing FE and she's doing FI and she's skipping the TI. And I don't know what to make of that, except to say that being a double deliberator doesn't necessarily mean you're going to deliberate well in both manners. And in Kimberly's instance, she seems to deliberate with more intensity anyway with her 6, but it's bad. So it's still countervalued. It's like she doesn't really have a lot of good feelings that she's deliberating with, I don't think. She deliberates typically with her bad feelings. When she uses TI, she usually uses that to good effect. I've not heard her use TI to bad effect. It's like, it's just more often the FI comes on stronger and it's more consistent with her SI aspect, so she just sort of rolls with it. What would an ENTJ look like in repair mode? They'd be very much attending to that which they care for and value and find precious, and knowing their feelings and paying attention to their loved ones very much, and their cat or whatever. Repair mode means typically that they've just experienced some sort of trauma. The example I use is when my dog died. I went into ENTP repair mode, which is just shit tons of SI basically. I'm against bullying, but I'm also being offended over everything. Yeah, I feel you there. I'm the same way. I'm against bullying and I'm against being overly sensitive. So in a dual relationship, the partner with the devil would have the blind spot of the other as a 6 slot. Right. I mean, I have her blind spot as my 6 slot too. That works the same for duels. The difference is my 6 slot is inconsistent with my dominant aspect, and my 3rd slot is consistent with my dominant aspect. So the idea is that I more countervalue my 6 and give it less credence than Kim does her 6. Try personality max. I'm personality max. I'm here to tell you personality. That reminds me, since I'm selling things, I have a typing service. If you want to be typed by me, it costs $100 US. It lasts a 75-minute one-on-one session, face-to-face. You'll fill out the ordinals beforehand if you feel like it, and then I'll ask questions and try to figure out exactly what type you are, give you a full explanation as to why I think it is, and give you a defensible case as to why it would be. And answer any questions you have or anything else you want to talk about. I'm very open and very cooperative in these things. Is to do basically whatever you want to individuate your purposes if you have a clear vision for what you want. If you don't, I can be the one with the clear vision about what it's going to be, like a typing. I've done plenty before. People are usually happy with it. So anyway, I'm trying to keep in mind to say that periodically when I make these things, and it just occurred to me. What would you say is the mode for an INFJ acting like an ESTP or an ISTP? Well, when INFJs act like ESTPs, presumably they're in repair mode. So for an INFJ, if they're experiencing a trauma, their way out of it is to do a bunch of shit and not know. To do more and know less. That's the answer for INFJ when they're recovering from a trauma. And it won't make them exactly ESTP-like, because they'll still have FE seconds, they'll still have TI 3rd. They'll just be prioritizing their 4th function a lot more during that immediate aftermath of the trauma. I think I'm an INFJ and I lash out like an ESTP under stress. Well, I mean, that's the thing, is our 4th function comes out when other things have failed. And we've got to use it. So when other things have failed, you're going to go to SE. When other things have failed for me, I'm going to go to SI. That's Dario Nardi who puts EEG on heads and measures brain activity on different types and creates such a kind of cartography. Yes, Dario Nardi's brain scans are, I guess, the one primary piece of empirical evidence of cognitive functions to the extent that we need it, which I don't think we do. But a lot of people like that kind of stuff. Can we have some empirical evidence? What do you need that for? Okay, the mechanics of the example I gave would be probably a big contributor to conflict in relations. INTP NI would frustrate the blind NI of ESFJ. Huh. Yeah, that could be a problem. But see, on the other hand, because ESFJ's blind NI is the same. I mean, yeah, I see your point. I don't know where to go with that. How do I determine if I'm an INTJ with good social skills or simply an INFJ? Well, the answer to that is FET aren't about good social skills, bad social skills, although they play out like that usually, but they're really about the default approach to problem solving. When you come up to a problem, Tom Donaldson.
Don't forget to pull in the FJ.
Okay. When you come up against a problem, Tom Donaldson, do you approach it by trying to solve the problem yourself or by trying to figure out who's going to help you solve the problem? If it's the latter, you're FE. If it's the former, you're TE. Is type constant throughout life or can it change? It's constant. It's constant. You can't change. Because type is not something you have. Type is a shorthand for how your being is made. It's best to think of types as characters in a role-playing game, I guess. When you have spent part of your life being a wizard, you might be able to go back to the beginning and say, okay, I'm not going to be half wizard, half fighter. But you'll never be as good as a wizard as a pure wizard. You'll never be as good a fighter as a pure fighter. You probably shouldn't do it. It's probably not wise to do that in general. It doesn't serve your character very well usually. So the point is, and that's in a role-playing game where they're being more generous. They're saying, yes, you can go be, I know you're a wizard, and that means you're weakened into magic and stuff and not a fighter at all. But yeah, you can go back and become a fighter too. Well, that's just a child's game, right? It's not reality in any sense. Certainly it's not the case with human beings. They can't just become a different being all of a sudden, which is what it means to switch types. I'm trying to determine my tri-type. What's it not 593 like? Well, they think a lot about. They want to understand shit that they fear. They don't want to avoid it. They don't want to build up defenses with a lack of understanding. They just want to understand it first and foremost. And then when it comes to conflict, they more or less appease or avoid the conflict or try to get out of the conflict try to end the conflict as soon as possible. And then the 3 means they justify themselves in terms of why they shouldn't be ashamed of themselves in general in life by virtue of their achievement and conventional mores, like having a nice car, having a nice house, keeping up with the Joneses. What if you prefer to solve simpler problems by yourself, but also prefer to not solve problems you find boring or hard? Well, you're TE then, because I prefer to not solve problems that I find boring or hard too. Everybody does. But the question is, do you prefer to solve problems yourself or enlist the assistance of somebody else? The blind of one type with the other preferring a 6 slot would put the person with the devil at an advantage in a relationship. That's a good point, Hambone. That's a good point. But the thing is, I really think Kim's a special circumstance. You know, she's experienced a lot of just a lot of shit, you know. When I have a problem, I don't like to find out who can help because I don't like asking for help, not from people I don't know usually, but even from people I know. INTJ and INFP share the hypothesis that one never has access to the shadow functions, and that the best you can do is emulate that it's in line with your view on one type's not changing. Yeah, that is in line with it, but I nevertheless would disagree. I think you can technically access and activate any of the functions at any time, basically, if you choose to. I talked about on a few occasions before how to activate SE. It's on the back side of my stack, but I can activate it. The one that I don't seem to be able to actually quite get the hang of recognizing when I'm attending by that fashion, clarify them as TE. No, I'd consider that in NETI, because when you're externalizing your ideas to clarify them for others, you are, you're doing one of two things. You're either doing it for that purpose, to clarify them for others, to win the argument, or to establish what you got to establish, or you're doing them for some other purpose. Now, if you're doing them for some other purpose, it's probably TE. But if you're doing them to win the argument, to be right, to put your ideas out there so others can test them too against your logic, and to try to win the public metric instead of the private metric, you're doing TIFE. It's just Andy. Are you a XXFJ? In socionics, they say your sixth function is strong, but would agree that's actually the case. It's sort of the reluctant helper of your eighth, which is already reluctant to begin with. So strong, that's a function you can improve at. Whether you want to or not is another question. I've improved at it, and I did want to. And it's because I felt like I wanted to be more rounded or some sense. Like sometimes I get tired of just the talking shit and I want to operate in the physical world. But really the reason I got better at it was not for any reason of my own motivation, but because Kimberly requires so much TE from me that it can't help but improve my TE. I'm having to solve her problems all the time. Are you FETI or TEFI then, Zandy? That's why I was saying that maybe my FE isn't that legit, since Eric said FE would work like finding out who can help. That's really FE tool function, first of all, is the way that it's most like that. FE, any other slot, is going to have a different relationship with how you solve problems. So I've got FE third. I don't look first to who's going to help me do this. I look first to how can I solve this myself. In fact, I'm slow and late to ask people to help when I should, and that's because my FE is kind of stunted. I'm afraid of asking others because I don't want to burden them, and then I think there's gonna be negative FE from that or something. Taylor, good response video to CS. Thank you, Taylor. I appreciate it. I've been pleasantly surprised that it's been received, and when I put it up, I thought that may not have been. I could maybe do that better or something, but I just thought, I think it's good. It's fine. Anyway, like I said, I've been pleasantly surprised. So thank you. Is there a type most likely to be a murderous madman? Grizzly bear? I've also heard it said that your eighth is a weak function. Well, I mean, my position on eighth function is that it's balanced and insecure. You think it's weaker than it is. It's actually pretty balanced. It does what it does reflexively. You don't pay much attention to it happening, and you're not aware really of it or intentional with it or willful with it. Well, Taylor, listen. You heard Dan. My eighth function is a weak function. Now, it's going to take a lot of SE to change that bong water. Okay? So It's balanced. I use it where appropriate. Changing the bong water is not very appropriate area to use SE, okay? It's more appropriate for like uploading videos and stuff. Playing the xylophone. Would a sensor be more apt to use food as a drug versus an intuitive? Yeah, probably. That makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. I never thought that before, but yeah. ENTJs are reasonable murderous madmen. If you give them money, they'll leave you alone. Maybe. I'm going to ask my PO for a travel permit to change that water. Well, just because it looks gross doesn't mean it is gross, okay? Because I want you to think about something. That bong water is rich with accumulated THC, rich with the flavors of yesteryear's weeds. And, that's pretty special. What's your perception time like? What's your perception time like? I don't know what that question means. Ain't that the truth? After all, you can't change water into oil unless you go deep into its molecular structure and somehow change it. Can you drink it then? No, I'm not going to drink it. That's gross. Look, it's not meant for drinking. It's meant for smoking through. That's where you get the flavor out of it. I would drink it, but I'm saving it for you, Taylor. I don't want you to miss out on the wonderful flavor of it. Type most likely to eat a lot or nothing at all, but never balanced. Oh, ENTP, ESTP, like not like we're dieting up and down, but we either remember to eat or we don't. Remember to eat, we stuff ourselves, and if we don't remember to eat, we don't eat. How you define your perception of time? Well, I would say I would normally define perception of time as an abstract objective analysis by talking about how humans perceive time in more or less subjective ways, and that the speed of time changes depending on the fit with your ontology. So when you're doing something you really like doing, time goes by quickly. If you're doing something you really don't like doing, time goes by really slowly. I'd point out that time passes in two different fashions, one of them being real time and one of them being turn-based or sequential stuff, where you're dealing with time as a series of event objects rather than as a fluid tapestry of action or something. But how would I define my perception of time? As distinct from other people's perception of time? I don't know. I have to think about that some more. It's an interesting question. What if your video makes C.S. Joseph stress eat and he gets fat again and reverts back to his INTJ shadow? Well, I hope that doesn't happen. I'm sure he'll be fine. I don't want to stress him out. I don't want to bust his chops. I'm just saying that, whatever. Sometimes you like what you're doing and it goes by slowly. Drugs. That's true. Sometimes it does. What do you think of ontology and trying to find correlations in facial expressions, mannerisms, and cognitive functions? I think that it's not something you should use to type people. I think that there are correlations like that that are reasonably strong, strong enough to use as a sort of starting point indicator, maybe. Like I often do and type police videos and stuff. I go, well, you look INFJ right after that. But we'll have to wait and see. And sometimes looks are right and sometimes looks are deceiving. So that's the problem with ontology is I've had people who NE a fair amount in a video with their eyes going up like like I do sometimes, or sometimes I don't. But they're not NE types. And so I agree, Hero Lamb. I don't want to do that either. I didn't. I haven't actually. So, just checked my notifications. Looked like my comment I left CSJ's video got hearted. Oh well, must have been a nice comment. I would say something along those lines as well. I would have no notion of time or space out for a long period of time. I'd like to be a time wizard to be able to control it. That's all. Yeah, I used to fantasize about being able to stop time a lot. During my teenage years, I guess I had a little bit more SE in me, probably. I remember fantasizing about if I could stop time, I'd go and squeeze all the girls' boobs. Anyway, what is the name of your blog? Because I think someone hacked you. The name of my blog is riceassrest.blogspot.com. We all did what? Tease him about his weight thing? I didn't say anything but negative about it or anything. I just said I had heard for the first time today that he had overcome obesity. That's all I said. You don't have time to stop time to squeeze all the girls' boobs? Well, back when I was 14, 15, 16 or something, I thought, man, that'd be so great. You squeeze all of their boobs. Okay. Somebody asked me, huh? Let me see. Well, it looks fine to me. I don't see anything that looks out of the ordinary. Yeah, looks fine. Is this the blog you're looking at? Okay. What if you could go back in time and actually had the power to stop time? Well, if I could go back in time and have the power to stop time, I guess I'd do it and see what happened and play around and see what's going on. I don't know what I'd do. I just realized that if you take the first letter of each name of Sir Isaac Newton, it spells Sen. That's good observation. Do you have any advice on how a person can be better at debating and being logical if they prefer their feeling function? Hope I worded this correctly. Yeah, that's a good wording. I would just say, look, I've had plenty of good debaters who were feelers. Now, granted, I usually got them as little kids, and it's tougher dealing with adults who haven't internalized any of the alternatives that are implied by debate. But I would just say this, that that people who are not feelers, the TI people especially, think that words mean what they say, and they have specific meanings that exclude other meanings. And FI people typically think that words either successfully or fail to successfully mean what I mean, rather than what they say. So if you can understand the distinction and try to focus on what the words say rather than what a person means, then you'll have sort of a better framework for understanding debate stuff. I don't think you named it that. I didn't think you named it that. Yeah, I named it that. It's an anagram of my name, Eric Strauss, Rice Ass. Do you recommend a good book for a debate for my 12-year-old daughter? Not really. You're not going to get to be a debater by reading books. There's zero chance of it. You have to compete. Do you think being out of tune with your body and surroundings is weak SI and SE, respectively? Yes. Yes and yes. Are you sure you want to give your daughter such skills? Yeah. How old is your kid? 12-year-old? I mean, you could hire me to coach. I work with that age group all the time. But if you want to try to sit down together, me and your kid, for 30, 45 minutes and talk about possible things that she could do in debate and stuff like that. I got no problem doing that. What do you call it? Pro bono or whatever. That's fine. And talk about your options and what you got going on in your local communities and stuff like that. Because debate is only meaningful when they compete. If they don't compete, it's not a meaningful activity. Competition makes it meaningful. What type of struggle most with the idea of loss of consciousness? The idea of it? Like, I hope I never faint or something? I don't know. I don't know if that has anything to do with type. By the way, Eric, all my questions are rhetorical. Okay, that's fine. I don't blame you for any of your questions. I encourage being challenged. I encourage people to challenge me as much as they can, as much as they want to. If I don't have the answer for it, then I don't deserve to be sitting up here pontificating. I think I'm gonna call it a night. Okay, you can challenge me to arm wrestle if you want. Anyway, my email address is suartsire@gmail.com. It's my name backwards, Eric Strauss backwards, SSUARTSCIRE@gmail.com. Email me if you got anything you feel like doing. Make a video with me. You want to make a video? You have a subject in mind. You want to. You have somebody in mind that if you know anybody who's like does interviews who might be interested in having me on their show or whatever or anything like that, please pass along my interest in doing those sort of things for that person, and maybe send them an email that you CC me on and get me in contact with them that way or something, and I'd be happy to take over from there. I'm looking to try to spread out and do more shit and get higher profile, more people knowing me or something. So anyway, thanks a lot for watching, everybody. Don't forget to eat plenty of cheese. It's just Zandy. Thank you for answering my questions, Eric. You're welcome. Have a good night, everyone. I second Zandy's notion and encourage all to have a night that is good. And goodbye. End stream.